Darn, Charles. I forgot some Dr. Seuss Christmas music for our Grift, who stole everything. I guess it's been the year of the Christmas special for me. How you doing, Charles?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking. I went to a Chinese wedding on Saturday, the wedding of one of the principals in the design firm that did all this great work here in the apartment. And I was, I think, the only Western person at the wedding. There were 300 guests. Much of it was in Chinese, but I had a great time. It was really, it was a fun evening, and
That's
nice to
good.
see, two young lovebirds, friendly and respectful, and it was just a very nice experience.
That's good to hear.
Got
I
to
bet
do.
you they serve Chinese food, but there they call it just food.
Yeah, they did, and in abundance. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of great food. But anyway, on the grift, who stole Christmas, and the great work of the ongoing work of the art department, with another fantastic poster. Uh, what I think has been going on here, and I had this bee in my bonnet actually way back at Yale when I was chairman of the Conservative Party, which was then a centrist party in the Yale Political Union. And I noticed all these strange people who were hanging around the Yale Political Union, people much older, uh, men, virtually all men, who would, quote, try to mentor students at Yale. It just struck me as really odd. There was one guy, I don't forget his first name, his last name was Rich, and he would stay in our dining table in Timothy Dwight College, where I was a resident, and he would be there at every meal. And he seemed to be like in his 60s, and he would be bragging to students about how actually rich he was, and apparently he was, two or $300 million rich back in 1975 or six, and it was unsettling to me. And then when I uh, decided that I would send money to the Ronald Reagan Library, I started getting these mailings from all these weird organizations. And I suspect, I can't say this with certainty, that I was put on the mailing list of this mailing list fundraising pioneer whose name is Richard Viguerie, Viguerie. And he's built a business, and others have emulated him, basically starting in the days when there was no internet and you had to do these mailing list solicitations. He had various organizations that would handle all aspects of fundraising, including coming up with a name for the organization. So you decide what type of organization you might want to be. Do you want to be simply a committee that's not an actual charity? Do you want to be a charity? Do you want, and he would create, he catered to the right. So there were all these, pro gun rights things, pro First Amendment, this, pro Republican, pro conservatives. And he built and has built a gigantic empire doing this. Now, one wrinkle in all of this is that if you fundraise for, Charles and Jason's committee, you're going to have to pay first class mail on the postage. On the other hand, if you fundraise for a public charity, it used to be the case that you could get discounted mailing privileges. And so there was a real advantage to shoulder the burden of regulatory reporting and filing and all that, because you get your postage much less. And with virtually free postage, a firm like Richard Viguerie's or a competitor can start sending out the kind of mailings that I used to get from Judicial Watch that now all come by email, um, on a relentless basis. I'm getting supposedly Trump-related messages, emails every day, and since I ignore them, they now say, "This is your final chance." They've been saying that for about
To buy
six
a
months.
watch?
This is your final chance. And look, there's if somebody wants to go the old school way of using snail mail, licking stamps, I remember doing that as a political volunteer in college. There was a guy called Roy Goodman who I forget what his office was in New York City, but the Republican Party. I actually in my Christmas vacation, I think of 1974, I think it was then, I thought that I might volunteer at the Democrat Party, because the village was Democratic and that's where I lived. They didn't answer the phone, so I said, "All right, let me call the Republican." And because my goal was to see how politics worked at a very granular level, and I was welcomed with open arms. The Republicans, started inviting me to dinners and this, and I remember there was one session where we had to go to one of Roy Goodman's offices and literally sit there and lick envelopes, put a mailer together, and put a stamp on it. And we all were sitting there doing that. And when we weren't doing that, we were then asked to make phone calls to people.
But they didn't give you a sponge. You literally had to lick them. That had to get disgusting after like 5 envelopes.
Yeah, I guess
Glue
it's
all
a long time. I don't remember the lick versus sponge distinction below these many years, 50 years later. But anyway, that was how things were done. So you migrate to an internet approach, and first of all, you don't have to spend the time or the money on postage and licking stuff, and there's instant records that are created, right? The email goes out and it's in your sent folder. So I bring all this up to say that Bill Clinton bragged in his ridiculously self-aggrandizing tome, My Life, My Lies. He bragged about the fact that he entered the White House at the time, as president, at a time when there was no internet. He was right about that. And that the number of websites, by the time he left, had reached some, then he thought, astounding number. It was really only after that, when broadband cable became prevalent, that people started really using the internet and having confidence, aggressively using it to the exclusion, let's say, of snail mail, and began to have the confidence to send money in bulk and pay bills and make contributions in bulk. I'd say in the mid-2000 timeframe, maybe 2002 to 5, precisely when Bill was building the Clinton Foundation, without disclosing properly all the benefits that he personally and his family got from his supposed saintly running of what was originally called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. And when you and I began our work in June of 2017, one of the early presentations we did together was the business model for charity fraud. And you and I have spent a lot of time going after the Clintons and other charity frauds, but it really is distressing to see the same grift that we saw in the non-existent Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation, to see that in this Turning Point family of, I would say, charity frauds, based on what I've seen so far.
And now, Charles, we need to back up for a second, because you're knee deep in this, and a lot of people who are watching are going to say, "What? Charity fraud? What?" Because there's been a huge kerfuffle on the internet now. That guy Zachary D. Gregorian, who has the Wolves in Finance. I've grown to like that guy, because at first I didn't know what to make of him, but he's got he just is a total accountant. I don't know if you could find a more accountant than that guy if you were casting a movie. He's a very, unassuming guy who's just going through the documents, but there's this whole pro-Candace, anti-Candace thing happening, and
we're gonna stay away from that. For now, because
that's what I wanted to say. It's important for us to let everybody know that we're not doing anything with that. You're just looking at the filings, and this other guy is talking about similar things, but you've gone much deeper, I think.
Yeah. So we will get into the Foundation, and we will get into Candace's role at Turning Point USA and her failures to disclose defects in those roles, in her attempts to get the Blexit Foundation through tax exemption, and then her false characterization of it having been sold to Turning Point. We'll get into all that, but for the moment, what I'd like to take a step back and explain to people is, this is actually one of the rare moments when I'm going to praise a regulatory system in a place like California and a place like New York, because lo and behold, when you look at what Turning Point failed to provide, excuse me, in California, and you look at the long chain of disciplinary letters that you're going to see shortly, you begin to appreciate just how absurd this letter, supposed letter from the acting inspector general of the Treasury Department, the TIGTA, saying, I believe on December 8th or 9th, in response to Erica Kirk, that there is no investigation of the Turning Point family of entities. Because that, if it is true that there is no investigation, that is unbelievably shocking to me, based on what I'm now. You be the judge as I take you through what we're going to see. So, in the first instance, let's go to ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer, and let's take a look at what we find for Turning Point for the period. There's an initial 990 for Turning Point that is, I believe, for the period July something 2012 to June 30th 2013. It's the very, if you look at through the filings, it's the very, very last one.
Yeah, I had downloaded quite a lot of these. There we go. Okay.
All right, let's pull that baby up to the front there. Let's just see what it says. Now, people who are familiar with our work understand that it is possible to have forgeries, and also understand that people who are prepared to commit fraud are quite willing to adjust forms. So Turning Point USA is, in theory, not only a 501c3, it's also a 170B1A6, which is a public charity. When you look at the first page of that form, Jason, I'm going to lead the witness here a little bit. At the top, you see it, a section where it says, is what type of entity is it? Underneath the name, you'll see it says, there's
yeah,
right,
501c4 it says right here. Ooh, back in 2012. Right. Wow.
No, this is actually filed in 2014.
But they say it's a C4.
Right, exactly right. Okay. Now that, again, from the birth certificate work, etc., this isn't an innocent mistake, right? You have to you had to type. Somebody typed in the font there 2000 C4, right? You see that?
Isn't it just a form from the? Oh, you're right.
No, you'll see it
different.
It's a type. Yeah, somebody took the trouble to insert a 4 into that section there, which you have to move the.
Oh, you're right. It's much bigger. Holy cow!
Right. It's a purposeful. So they typed a capital X into that box, and they typed a 4.
But is it possible, Charles, that back in the day that this was for 6, or maybe you were supposed to enter that like that? Have we seen other ones from 2012? Because that is weird.
No. There are other typed versions of this form, and other examples. But my point is, if you're going to say this was an innocent mistake, to line up a typewriter and have the X go in there, and then they didn't type 3, they typed 4.
Well, you've got,
and what was the date?
The C3 is part of the form right here, but then the form has a space. What I'm saying is it possible that in 2012, the form was only pre-printed with C3, and then if it was a 4, 5, or 6, you had to type it in? No?
No.
It says insert
and go
number.
Down right. And the instructions would tell you that. But let's go down the page a little bit. It says in here that this thing was received on. If you go down the version, there's a mark.
I have to switch it to scrolling here. Received 2014. Okay. But the issue, just so that I'm not getting confused, May 21st, 2014, just so we're not confusing the audience, or I'm not getting confused. The issue is that it is a 501c3, but they're saying it's a 501c4. Is that it?
No, I'm going to show you. In fact, the thing was organized or was incorporated. It's not clear that it was ever organized. property. Remember that from the Clinton Foundation?
Yeah.
It was incorporated in July of July 23rd, I believe it is, 2012, in Illinois as a C4.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to show you. I'm going to show you that. And the distinction is important. A C4, contributions to a C4 are not tax
Right.
deductible.
Right.
Contributions to a C3 may be, depending on which type of C3 we're talking about. And a C3 that is illegally funding political campaigns in the guise of charity,
Yeah.
has got some pretty serious problems.
Yeah.
So at inception, this thing was supposed to be a C4. It faced the choice of doing it the way I like to see things done, which is to say, all right, for the first period for 2012, and remember that's a period where the Tea Party was fighting to try to make Barack Obama a one-term president. Right? That's 2012 is Benghazi, 9/11, 2012.
Yeah.
So this is a period where the Tea Party sprang to life, and I watched it firsthand. I actually spoke at Tea Party rallies in that time frame, and it was definitely. It wasn't like the rallies you and I saw in New York and elsewhere, where the signs are all pre-printed and the same
Crackhead
stupid
Barney wasn't there.
yeah, the same dun 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 dun. With cowbell bullshit.
Right.
With some guy with a lady with a megaphone. Anyway, so you faced a choice back in 2013. Do you put in a partial year return for the period July 23rd, 2012 to December 31st, 2012, and get that return in by May 15th, 2013? Or do you do what the Clintons have done with the Bushes? You say, you know what, let's buy ourselves some more time. Let's claim that our fiscal year end is June 30th, and that will give us until maximum, May of 2014 to get our first return in. And that's what they chose to do. Okay, they chose, and I would argue that this is not because they wanted to be as transparent as possible. It's likely because there was a blurring between what they were doing. Was it C4 activities, non-tax deductible, or was it C3, or was it a mixture of both? So there was a question. And then we get to the next red flag. On internet sites, you'll notice on this page, they say in here that the website is turningpointusa.net. And when you go into Who Is Lookup, tell us, please, what date that thing comes together. Turningpointusa.net.
We got
when was
there.
Okay, I'm leading the witness.
Yeah,
I've been there.
I didn't know that we were gonna. Okay, so we want. Hang on. We want.
Sure. I just punch into Google Who Is Lookup, and then up comes.
I'm going to ICANN here. Okay.
All right.
Created June 13th, 2012.
So before it was incorporated. So how do you do that? And
just create a website.
I understand that, but you see, the issue with potentially, shall we say, leaky fundraising campaigns is if you create a website that says send money to turningpointusa.net, can you, in friendly suburban Chicago, where you're a well-known business dude with restaurants, whatever, can you get a local bank to open up a bank account with a name that's different than your real name, so that then when the money comes,
website,
yeah, when money starts pouring in, remember the first step in a charity fraud is that all the money that comes your way does not get deposited in the official charity's account. And if you were going to be doing C4 activities as distinct from C3 activities, you really need to be pretty careful about that. Now, maybe this guy, we'll get later to the fact, and I have many friends actually who never went to college and are brilliant. So I'm not somebody who says, particularly in this day and age, you got to go to college. But this mentor, William Montgomery of Charlie Kirk, turns out spent 2 years at a place called Lincoln College in Lincoln, Illinois, which is defunct at this point. So, this guy said, I
Is
didn't go
that
to
bad?
college. I didn't graduate from college. Why should you?
Yeah.
Anyway, so in this crucial period, they first obtain, somehow somebody first obtains a website, turningpointusa.net, and says later, remember the website was obtained in June of 2012, and the thing was only incorporated 6 weeks later in Illinois by Bill Montgomery. And it's not clear to me that the Articles of Incorporation were ever adopted formally by the board. We'll get to that in a second. The second thing we could do is later on, we discover that the website that is used for Turning Point becomes tpusa.com. And we can do the same thing you did on Icon to see when was that website obtained.
What happens if you look at turningpointusa.net today?
Yeah, we could do that, but let's first look at tpusa.com because there's a bombshell that's going to come out of this that I know.
Here it is. It says created 2002.
And how old was Charlie Kirk in 2002?
Like 5 or something? No, 9. I don't know.
9.
Yeah.
9. So why do you need 2 websites?
Precocious creating these websites to do fundraising at 9, Charles.
Right. So why do you need 2 email addresses, 2 websites?
Oh wait, this is TUP. I'm sorry. That's. Wait a second.
TPUSA.
I put in the wrong thing. Let me search it again. My mistake. Forgive me. Here, tpusa.com was also created in 2002. That's a weird thing we just discovered.
Right. And so what happened, I remember this is when I actually was still working and was involved with various operations that had websites. And I remember being told that it was a good idea to go and take the domain name, your personal name, for every modifier possible, org, com, edu, whatever. So I can imagine somebody back in 2002 saying, you know what, let's go register all these different websites. And the potentially nefarious part comes when, you get into fundraising and you've got all these chapters and money is going to different chapters and different people at different websites. There is enormous potential for money to be, let's just say, siphoned off. And you would want to see much stricter controls than are evident here. Now let's dive into this page a little bit more and see.
Sorry, Charles. One quick weird thing here. When you put in turningpointusa.net, which is what they had here back in the day, it takes you to tpusa.com, but it says this site is currently undergoing scheduled maintenance. But when I type in tpusa.com, it takes me to this.
Right.
That's weird.
Right. I think somebody's covering tracks or trying to cover tracks for reasons that we'll get into shortly. If we get back into the 2000, the 990 that you had there, look at section C, block C. What do you fail to see that you should see? There's no descriptor.
Where is that C?
It's right above the name.
Oh,
Turning Point.
Yeah.
It just says C. It should say name of organization in bold, and below that it should say doing business as, where we give an opportunity to say doing business as, and I don't see that on this form. So there's something off on this form.
Wow.
So if we go back into the index of forms available for Turning Point, let's look at the next year.
So, Charles,
Okay.
we're right now at just about the end of our time here
Oh, okay.
on our introductory section, and we're going to get into some detailed stuff. So people are going to be able to join us right now. If you're interested in what's being discovered here, and you should be, you can join us in the sponsor exclusive segment by sponsoring the show on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Also, people who follow me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe there are going to get access to the sponsor exclusive show. We'll be back in 5 minutes and we're going to dive deep into these